Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education. Please be assured that we've put the appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. Public seating has been made available. The meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to view remotely if they wish to do so. The public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. A little bit of housekeeping safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Don't attempt to use the lifts and assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. And in order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in, please sign out when you leave the building. The meeting, as I said, will be live streamed and everyone speaking will be on camera. And please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they've finished. Okay, I'll do some introductions, starting with you.
Councillor Tom Coles, I'm the Labour Opposition Spokesperson for the portfolio and I represent Fratton Ward.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Angela Mann. I'm Finance Manager for Children, Families and Education.
Hi, Sarah Daly, Director for Children, Families and Education.
Sam Bushby, Deputy Director for Children and Families.
Yeah, Mike Stoneman, Deputy Director, Education.
Welcome to all the officers too. So I believe that there have apologies been sent from Councillor Terry Norton, who is on holiday. So I'll move straight on to item 2, which is a declaration of members' interest, which is our normal ones. I'll start off first, Tom, which is I am Vice Chair of Governors at Craneswater Junior School.
I'm on the Academy Advisory Board for Penhale and Newbridge.
Thank you. So with no further ado, we will move on to item 3, which is an update on the Education Capital Programme, which I believe Mike is presenting today.
Yep, I'm going to cover that one today, thank you. Okay, so this report provides an update on the implementation of our Education Capital Programme. It covers 4 main areas. One is around the SEND accommodation strategy, the other is around basic need. We also have a section on schools building condition projects in relation to our LA maintained schools, and then there's a section also on the school rebuilding programme, and finally a small section on the replacement of our education case management system. And what I'll do is I'll just briefly run through each of those in terms of a summary. So on the SEND accommodation strategy, section 3.1, we cover there a summary of the current funding that we have available for the SEND accommodation strategy. We've also just highlighted there the fact we have put in an expression of interest for a special free school, 16 to 19. The paper there obviously sets out the deadline of the 11th of July, which is now passed, and just to confirm that expression of interest has gone in. We also provide an update on some of the key projects, so that's Penhale, Flying Bull and Cliffdale. I'm not going to go into the detail, but you can see that we're on track for those projects. We also have some inclusion capital grants of up to £10,000 for mainstream schools to support our inclusive agenda for SEND, and a further round of grants will be made available to schools from the autumn term 2022. We provide a summary of some disability adaptations, which is around Castleview Secondary Academy, and then finally some condition works that we're doing at Craneswater, and also the works we're now taking forward at Arundel Court Primary Academy in terms of a new inclusion centre there. So that's a very brief update on our SEND accommodation strategy. If I now turn to 3.2, which is basic needs sufficiency, we've set out there where we are in terms of secondary places. Bear in mind at primary we're now starting to see some surplus, having expanded those schools in the past, but for secondary we are largely there. We're certainly okay for 22-23, but we are we are going to have to create just a few additional places to deal with the bulge that we're expecting in 23-24, 24-25, we've provided a brief summary there around the additional works we're doing at Milton Cross Academy to cope with that particular bulge, and that is on track. Section 3.3 deals with school building condition works. This is in relation to our LA maintained schools, and you can see there details of those projects that we're taking forward, and some of which are going to be completed by September 22. That's Portsdown, Cumberland and Medina. There are also some additional works at Craneswater Annex, which we've got planned. Some minor works at the Harbour School at Tipner, which we're doing in conjunction with Delta Education Trust to address urgent condition issues in relation to windows and doors. And then also we've just set out there just the latest round of condition improvement fund projects which Academy Trust have bid for, and you can see there 5 schools which have benefited, well, four schools, but two projects at Cliffdale which have benefited from that programme. In section 3.4 we've just covered the school rebuilding programme, so 2 projects just to mention. There's the Mayfield School, which obviously the school has been rebuilt now, but there are still some additional works that have to take place, namely the demolition of the old school and making that area good, and that is on track for November 2022. And then Beacon View Primary Academy, we've been looking at potentially developing part of the land that Beacon View is on to create an area for housing, but also then to improve the play facilities at Beacon View Primary Academy. That's at feasibility stage at the moment, but we've set out the next steps that we would have to do to conclude that work. And then finally in 3.5 we've just highlighted the replacement of the education case management system and the fact that we've now completed the procurement exercise. The preferred organisation we're now going with is Serverlec, although now known as the Access Group, and moving to a new system called Synergy, and we've got an 18 to 24 month project ahead of us to complete that piece of work, but again that's on track for completion within the next 2 years. And that is very briefly a summary of the update. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Mike. Tom, do you have any questions?
Yeah, it's just under 3.1.5. It says for Penhale Infant that it was completed September 22. Should that read 21?
That's a fair point, because we did complete the original project in September 21. I'm trying to think if it's an additional piece of work.
But otherwise,
I'll check that one, Tom, but you're right.
I'm always happy to see an increase in SEND provision. So it's a great report again as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll check that one.
Thank you, Tom. I think there was 1 classroom and then there was an additional classroom.
That's true, yes, we've got 8 and then an additional 8. So
I think we went, I think 21
yeah.
was when we went to that opening, and then I think there was an additional 8, which is this one. But
No, that's right. That's exactly what's happened. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
good project anyway. Excellent. Rainbow Fish Centre. Thanks, Mike. As I say, good report. And also worth stating that we're still managing to move forward with these capital projects, notwithstanding the increases in costs and all the other challenges, particularly over the last couple of years around completing them. But we're still committed to providing high quality special needs accommodation, and as well as obviously looking at the sufficiency. But they're still ambitious and still looking for opportunities to make sure that that inclusion agenda remains high on our priorities. So I will go through the recommendations for the sake of the meeting just to clarify. So note that the Council has been allocated a further high needs provision capital allocation of 5.8 million for 22 to 24. That will be spent. To note the invite from the DFE to submit applications for new free schools and the Council's response. To note the progression on the accommodation for special educational needs projects and the schemes agreed since the last report. To note the progress of the sufficiency schemes and the conditions projects for the LA maintained schools, and to note that the Council will be supporting an application to the DFE to carry out a land transfer at Beacon View Primary Academy in in parallel with that feasibility work, and to note the progress with the replacement of the education case management system project. Okay, thank you very much. So that is item 3 completed. Item 4 is the school attendance and reducing exclusions, and the focus on relational practice. And are you picking this up as well, Mike?
I've got to cover that as well, yeah. Okay. Thank you. So this report covers the work we are doing to effectively take forward the implementation of the strategy to improve school attendance and reduce exclusions, but in particular a strand around relational practice. And this follows a report that went to Schools Forum seeking a 3-year commitment from the DSG carry forward to support that particular strand. But if I just take you through now the sort of summary of that, and the background is contained in section 3, which is what I'm going to go through now. So firstly, as we set out there, we have a citywide strategy in place to improve school attendance and reduce exclusions, or what is now referred to as suspensions. That was approved by the PEP Strategic Board last year. A particular strand within that strategy is around relational practice, which is building on the previous work we did in terms of restorative practice in schools and across the children's wider workforce. And we commenced last year a relational practice programme involving several schools in what we called a first wave. So 17 of our 61 schools were involved in that, with work being led by the Saltons Academy Trust, where we have a standout school, Trafalgar, in terms of how they've embedded relational practice within that school. But we have a number of other schools who are in a sort of similar position to Trafalgar. But we want now to extend that across the city. So Wave 1 commenced. That has been very successful and continues. And now what we want to do is to build on that work and to extend it across the whole of the city over the next 3 years to ensure all schools have an opportunity to participate in the relational practice programme. This report effectively is therefore asking for Cabinet member approval to approve this commitment of £530,000 over 3 calendar years, which will commence in January 23, to support more waves, at least 3 more, in 23, 24 and 25, as well as continued support for those schools that have been involved in each of those waves. We've set out a breakdown of those costs in the Schools Forum report, and the detail in terms of the rationale, the reasons for those recommendations are also contained in that report that went to Schools Forum, which is included in Appendix 3. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Tom, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, it all looks good, I think. Again, same provisions in there, and homeschooling as well, which is something I was looking out for. But yeah, happy with everything that's in there, really. It's a great report.
Thank you so much. I actually think this is probably the most excited I've been about a report that's come to my decision-making meeting, and more happy because it comes with the endorsement from Schools Forum, because actually this doesn't work unless schools are really on board, and that robust discussion around the decision to use that DSG money is really heartening to me, because it just shows that Wave 1 work that's sort of disseminated across the city is really landing well. And although this comes under a kind of agenda item that talks about attendance and reducing exclusions, which is absolutely crucial, it's so much bigger than that. It's around the curriculum, it's around the way we treat people in school, it's the way we engage with parents, and I am really optimistic about the impact that this can have on the widest relationships that we possibly can have in schools, which we know are at the heart of our communities. And then when those relationships are good and children are in school and enjoying learning, then I am cautiously optimistic that our outcomes will follow suit. But actually we need to go back to these basics to be able to challenge those other issues. So really, really excited about this. So, and delighted to be able to approve this commitment of 530,000 from the DSG carry forward to to roll forward with the next waves of this project. And also the second thing is applying for that disapplication to the Secretary of State. So.
Yeah, and just worth noting that you know it will be subject to that disapplication request, which we are taking forward and we will submit shortly. But you know, I'm relatively optimistic that will be approved, but it is subject to that process.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Excellent. Okay, so item 5 is Children, Families and Education Portfolio Budget Monitoring Report for the financial year end 2021-2022. Angela, over to you.
Thank you. So the report covers the revenue and capital budgets as at the end of the financial year 21-22. The overall revenue outturn was a 4.4 million overspend, of which just under £2 million was due to COVID-19 pressures, which there was a corporate provision separately to cover those costs. The report covers more detail in section 5. The non-COVID overspend was due to an overspend on children's social care of just under 2.8 million, and this was due to the pressures in residential placements, the care leavers service and unaccompanied asylum seekers care leaver budgets. And there was an underspend in education of just over £300,000 to slightly offset that. In terms of the COVID-19 spend, this was covering increased costs for home to school transport, which provided additional routes to try and provide some social distancing and to keep people in bubbles. There was the delays to the introduction of the family safeguarding service when COVID started, and there was still the impact for last year. And then there was a significant amount of spend on staffing in different areas as a result of COVID-19, which is detailed in the report. And finally, there was also additional costs in residential due to delays in reunification as a result of the pandemic. For the capital programme, this is a long-term strategy, and at the end of the financial year, it was projected to break even. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Many thanks, Angela. Any questions or comments?
Unfortunately, I'm not the most financially astute sort of person, so I struggle with these sort of numbers. But I mean, COVID was a bit of an impact on everything, really. So it's good to see we're working on getting that balance back out, and there's nothing I can see in there that I disagree with. So.
Thank you, Tom. I think it's just worth saying that the challenges before COVID were exacerbated and enlarged by COVID. So COVID had a massive impact. But it is worth saying here now that the things that are beyond our control in some ways around the high cost placements are putting us in a really, really, really difficult position. And it's not just us here in Portsmouth, it's across the country. But that is a reality, and we need to safeguard children. That's the most important thing that we need to do. And all the time that the government is not tackling that issue, then we will be faced with these eye-watering overspends. We've had a really good discussion this morning around what the budget looks like when you mitigate against that, and actually we do some really, really good and successful work which needs to be seen in a really positive light rather than just within this kind of climate of overspends around high cost placements. So it's a serious situation. We take it seriously, we'll evaluate it, but we know where those overspends are coming from. Okay, so if there's no other comments, I will find my place. And it's a report for noting. So I do note the revenue and capital outturn positions for last year's financial year, together, most importantly, with the variance explanations. Okay. So on to item 6, which is the local authority to maintain schools balances as of the 31st of March. Who is that? Angela again? Back over to you.
Thank you. So this is the annual report to Cabinet Member on the year-end position of maintained schools, revenue and capital balances, and this is for the year ending the 31st of March 2022. Section 4 details the year-end position of the revenue balances, and the second table shows those balances overall have decreased by just under 0.4 million. Whilst the majority of schools have seen an increase, 7 schools saw a decrease in balances, 3 of which have balances in excess of 10% of their budget share and are not of concern. 1 has seen a reduction of less than 25% and is being monitored as part of regular school meetings, and the remaining 3 have been contacted and actions are detailed in the report. In addition to those schools reducing balances, the report also looks at those schools with excessive balances. At the end of the year, 2 schools had uncommitted balances in excess of 20% of their budget share, and the schools have been contacted. For the capital balances, these are detailed in section 6 of the report, and there has been an increase in the capital balances, and this relates to a large capital project being undertaken by one of the secondary schools. I'm happy, so that's the end of the report. There's lots of detail in there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Do you have any questions or comments?
I think I mentioned it in the briefing, but it was just about the school that's produced a recovery plan, about what stage that's at with being reviewed by the authority, and what progress is being made on that.
So I probably need to get back to you because of course we've had the end of the term, so I'm not sure. I know they detailed something, and there was just some queries that we had and wanted to make sure that they'd taken everything into account. So we were going back, but I can find out and let you know. But it might be that it has to wait until September when everybody's back now from their leave.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to wait to hear from you. That's fine. Thanks.
I think that's a fair comment. But I think what's really important in this report is that those conversations are robust, and I think we're still probably suffering from the kind of the tail of the lockdown and everything, where spending money was bizarrely difficult, and in many ways, and actually we're out of that pattern around schools looking where their budget, where they're saving up for particular projects and everything. But I think it's a fair question, and I'm sure Angela will get back to you, Tom, with that information. Okay, so this is a report just informing us of the LA maintained schools revenue and capital balances, and I duly note it. Which leads us on to the third and final finance-y type report, item 7, which is the DSG outturn 21-22. Back to Angela.
Thank you. So again, this is an annual report that's updating Cabinet Member on the outturn position for the Dedicated Schools Grant for the financial year 21-22. The year-end position was an underspend of 3.4 million, the majority of which relates to funding for pupils with education, health and care plans in mainstream schools, special schools, alternative provision and out-of-city placements. And the reasons for those are detailed in section 9 of the report. Included in the underspend is an approved planned underspend of £0.4 million, which relates to the Growth Fund and the school-specific contingency for use in 22-23, which, like I say, was planned because we knew we didn't need it in 21-22. There were budget adjustments in February 2022 for the early years block. There is an underspend of 0.3 million, and that's included in the underspend and is carried forward, and we're expecting there to be a reduction in funding following the adjustments for the January 2022 census. Section 10 sets out the movement in the carry forward balance and the proposed use of the carry forward for 22-23. And the balance available for use is in Table 6, and that would reduce to 3.3 million if the proposals that Mike outlined in item 4 is approved by the Secretary of State. And I'm happy to take any questions on this report.
Many thanks, Angela. No, I think we're used to ESG reports. It's just back to that age-old thing about different timelines, isn't it? Particularly around early years and getting that sense of stuff and then into that. And I'm always reminded of how quickly that carry forward can be reduced. And I think we're in a healthy position, but we have a really good relationship with Schools Forum, who challenge us on that. And actually, we work together on this about using that money in the most prudent and sensible way possible, whilst trying to get as much of it out into schools. And I feel very confident about that process working well. So, are there any other comments or anything from anyone? So thank you for that. That's another noting report, isn't it? So that's the Dedicated Schools Grant Outturn 21-22, and I duly note that. So if there's no other questions or comments, that comes to the end of our agenda. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you to officers for your reports and your time today. And thank you, Councillor Coles, for your questions. And we will stop the meeting. Thank you.